Hello everyone and thank you for having us. My name is Mili and we're at Monastery, Privacy Week, pop-up city happening in Portugal, Ericeira. And during this week we're going to have a very interesting panel about pop-up cities with their organizers and founders. We're with Nicole from Zuzalu and also Thailand, Burns from zuGeorgia, Amy from Crecimiento, and Petra from Monastery itself. For today's panels, we're going to go with a little bit of an introduction from each of our speakers, a question for each, and some open questions to debate together. I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves, your projects, and from them we can take it on. Yes.
Hi, I'm Petra from Monastery, and the idea behind Monastery is to get some focus work and to gather with other builders to share the day-to-day, so you get to share what you're working on, but also share other parts of life. As nomads is really important, the social part, so that's also something that we really value. And one of the main goals is that one, collaboration, and the other one is to onboard new builders into the space.
Okay. Well, I'm Amy. Hi everyone. Basically, I'm part of Crecimiento and Aleph. Crecimiento is a movement trying to seize the opportunity that currently Argentina has and a way that it can empower crypto not only locally but also worldwide. And Aleph was the first pop-up event that happened during August, and it's going to be repeated in time to bring attention to what was happening and create and jumpstart a community in Buenos Aires.
So, hello, I am Burns from zuGeorgia. zuGeorgia was our attempt to bring a Zuzalu version 2.0 according to our analysis of what the essential nature and the potential of the Zuzalu format was. And our answer to that is that we go and focus on cypherpunk, on DAC, and on the cognitive sovereignty of the individuals that are with us as residents there, and to handle many vulnerabilities and many misconceptions that arise after the first Zuzalu event, and to create and to lay the foundations for a clearer communicated and more precise future that creates cultural and also digital interoperability, not only between pop-up events, but between an overarching framework of many aligned projects that can be linked and interoperate over a shared framework. And this is one crucial thing that was missing, and this is somehow the translation of the cypherpunk ethos of interoperability that we know from technology and from building and from Web3. We wanted to apply this to the cultural sphere. And this cultural sphere needs some minimal common denominators that we know what we are talking about. A little bit like mathematicians need the convention that we have 10 digits. If we don't have that, then people are not talking about the same thing. And our topics and our priorities were not only tailor-made for the country of Georgia, for the precise political situation there, for the possibility of creating special economic zones and network states there, for the possibility to inspire the government of Georgia to go in more sincere Web3 direction with their digital agency, but also to collect maps and tools that are fulfilling these cultural and digital interoperability standards and that are empowering the individual to more sovereign action, both in the cognitive sphere and in the digital sphere. And our mission statement altogether was laying the foundations for a transnational cypherpunk techno-optimist network. And this is what we do. And this is what it was, and this is what we will be keeping on doing with the Village protocol, which is aimed to allow also an integration of this cultural direction into Zuzalu city on the digital sphere that is very much adherent to the Web3 ethos.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I helped start Zuzalu last year, which for context is a pop-up that went from March 25th to May 25th that gathered about 200 residents and 1,000 visitors for a duration of 2 months in Montenegro. That was an interdisciplinary pop-up, first of its kind, I think. And yeah, now I'm working on Thailand, which is a separate thing. It's intended to be a one-time build-focused pop-up, hosted after DEF CON from November 18th to December 18th, with the explicit goal of like incubating more projects, like long-form building, and creating a conducive space for that. Yeah.
Thank you guys for the intro. I have a specific question for you, Nicole. You just mentioned that you were both present in the inception of Zuzalu and now for Thailand. My question would be, would you please share with us some of the biggest learnings that you've had so far from the first experience, and what would you like to apply to now Thailand, and what wouldn't you apply?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of things went well and didn't go so well at Zuzalu, and we're not like trying to perfect all of it in one go. One thing that was missing from Zuzalu was very focused building time. I think because there was so much going on and it was so exciting, there were many distractions to pull people away from like head down grinding. So this time we're trying to focus on that particular part, bringing together builders. So we are explicit in people we are curating for, founders, engineers, researchers, and we are creating a space where it's like a known social norm to be working. And we also want to experiment with long-form building, so moving away from like the typical hackathon where there's a lot of like grant farming, it's like a 3-day thing. It's very fun, but it's not necessarily good for like products that you want to see go into production. So we're doing a month-long build with a specific format we're testing. So very excited to be build-focused. Another thing I learned was like operationally, just having gone through the first time, it was highly manual the first time doing it. So I've have a lot of learnings there. Finally, we can automate a few more of the processes. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll have some knowledge to share with other pop-up city organizers.
So if my understanding is correct, is that you guys want to make it a little bit more building focus, more for people to be able to code a little bit more, and also to have more automation from the first of their kind that you have with Zuzalu, so you can share this with the rest of them, that kind of like having as a base, right?
Yes, I think one more thing is like the first one was very interdisciplinary. We had people that came from crypto, but also from biotech, longevity, AI, rationality, philosophy, like all different crews. This time we are focusing in more on crypto specifically because it's happening after DEF CON. So given everyone's already in town and there's going to be so much research going on, we want to synthesize a lot of that and capitalize on that and build on top of that and just hold space for that specifically.
Thank you. That actually relates very much for the next question that has to do with Burns, and also to Zuzalu in the sense that you mentioned Burns, that zuGeorgia was, I don't know if my words are correct, but firstly inspired by Zuzalu, and therefore my question would be, what is Zuzalu to you, and how does zuGeorgia relate to that?
Well, Zuzalu was one precise event in Montenegro, lasted 2 months, initiated by, everybody knows who that was, and it was an experiment. And the magic was partly that people came together and had some overlaps in their profession, in their meta tribe, in the internet tribe or so. We had longevity people, we had network state people, we had rationalists, we had the coordinations crew, we had CK researchers, and all of them are doing something technical, scientific, or intellectual. So truth-seeking in a kind of way, or dependent on truth-seeking and dependent on the ability to win with truth-seeking or to increase output with truth-seeking. The format itself, as it was afterwards commented by Vitalik in the article, was an attempt to see if something like a network state, like this idea that Balaji had, people opt in to something that they can align to, and first they got to know about it online, but how cool would it be to just permanently live with a bubble of people that just agree to certain things that you would wish to be there in the community you live with, or in the people in the city that you live with. And this leads to highly focused networking effects. Not in every case, but the chance and the probability that it arises raises tremendously. We had seen cross-pollination between different thought schools and topics like longevity and network states ended up building Vitalia together, and we're aiming for the first longevity network state in order to help biomedical research go forward. We had the public goods funding that also then was used for the CK realm. We had the CK realm that was, in theory, then used over Macy in exchange for public goods funding, and we had many encounters of highly interesting and open-minded people that are excellent in their field, and that's totally worth listening to. They are really, many of them are really amazing, inspiring, and wherever you go, there you are always at the goal, because it doesn't matter so much if you miss something maybe, but you end up in a really interesting conversation with your potential co-founder, or with someone who completely updates your mental models about something that you weren't able to picture before. And exactly these network effects were arising, and this was the essence and the potential for us, and this is what we wanted to improve. But that's the theory part. The practice part of Zuzalu 1 was there were given not many instructions. It was just the first test drive. What happens if that actually is done? It was never done before. Vitali wrote an article about crypto cities, how to utilize Web3 technologies and other tools that are compatible with that realm, and organize as a city, or use them for human coordination problems or issues. This did not really play out in the first experiment. We had SUPAS, we had some SUPOL votings for feedback, but aside of that, we were there on a holiday, basically. We had no forced attendance to nothing. People were free to move around. The basic function of Zuzalu is attract the people that are kind of nerds in the intellectual, technical or scientific sphere, because they can very well interoperate with each other. They can have very high quality conversation with each other, and step out of the way to a degree, offer stages that they can use, offer a program, a curated program as well that might inspire people. But aside of that, remove the friction between the minds. And that worked. And that was great. And that, I think, is what Zuzalu as a phenomena is to me. There were other things occurring. Many people organized sport events. Cold plunging became memes. There were tons of parties. I enjoyed them a lot as well. There were artists there that made art together, but all of them were usually also builders, scientists, or intellectuals. It was the nerds who made the art. It was the nerds who threw the block ravers parties. It was the nerds who created the cold plunging and the football teams and so on. This doesn't need to have reinforcement from the outside, it just happens organically, literally bottom up. But the infrastructure is offered to them. We had a impressive venue in Montenegro. I never lived at such a beautiful place in my life before, I think. And it was very inviting. You had the privacy. Many people had their own living quarters or lived in groups of 4 together. You could avoid it. We had a shared breakfast. That was the highlight for many people of the day. That was where everybody every day was meeting, and you can hop from table to table to table. You get to know really interesting people, exchange accounts of messengers, and have really good conversations. And that is, so to say, the potential. The counter side, however, was that there also were dynamics of, yeah, what is Zuzalu? Can we somehow use it for us? It was not defined how Zuzalu will continue. And if Zuzalu will continue, there was hinted that the project might continue, but not in what form, that we just do the same thing next year or so, that it will be with the same people, that the people that by chance were volunteering as track leads play any role, or even that the thought schools were precisely the same. All that was never said. But, of course, when you have interests in industries or in groups, then political kind of parties form. So this was one thing that we did very decisively different in zuGeorgia, Georgia. The very number one aspect of the difference is capture resistance. We made it very, very clear that this is a temporary event. When the event is over, the attendance of the event grants you still access to the digital infrastructure, but it doesn't mean that we grandfather in someone, and it doesn't mean that you are a trusted member of the community, because this is a very often seen misconception. No, it's rather the case that you were accepted there. So it is some kind of social proof, but it's not a good indication to trust someone, and it is not a good indication to call something a community. But communities formed on zuVillage, Georgia, just like communities formed on Zuzalu. Vitalia was a consequence of cross-pollination in Zuzalu. This was one community that formed on Zuzalu, on this breeding ground of cross-pollination. The second thing was, how do we curate members or residents? And this is a tricky question. It was done in a rather experimental way in the first Zuzalu. Vitalik handed out a bunch of invitation forms to 3 selected online communities, and then there were some volunteers that also brought some cool people until all the places were full. Please correct me if that was wrong.
Basically, we brought in some inviters. Like, for example, Vincent is a good one. Like, he was tasked with like bringing in biotech people.
Yeah.
I was one. Vitalik is one. And essentially, we just started like propagating out. Track leads were also told to like try and recommend people. And then we had a very like centralized process of just saying yes or no to people the first time around. But it wasn't super sophisticated, and I would say it was relatively co-created.
I think the big difference here is that in that case, people got told, by the way, do you know the name Vitalik Buterin? Yeah, this guy is doing a 2-month event in Montenegro. Nobody will know what it is about, but do you want to come? Yeah, and this is of course a very different pull factor from what we had in zuVillage, Georgia, that we had a precise mission statement, and we had a actually quite challenging application form. And that filtered out a lot of people that came for the wrong reasons. Our application form not only asked in-depth questions, but also aimed at showing us organizers how do these people tackle the questions? How do they ask their own questions? Are they trying to tell us what they think we want to hear? And one of the most crucial parts, effort. Are the people putting in at least an hour of work? Are they writing such a novel, or are they putting in minimum viable products and have even the altitude to name Vitalik himself as a referrer person and hope that they get in because they are well known and rich or something? And this was the proof of concept of, okay, Zuzalu was not really had the one commandment like the network state, but it had, it is in need of a direction that enables us to identify the people that are actually interested to their authentic motives. And these are the 2 things I think that we updated. take it very seriously to be capture resistant. What happened to Zuzalu in the aftermath will not happen to the zuVillage protocol. And we were very eager to really go for the right people that want to be there, that have the willingness and the ability to update their mental models and be curious about doing this to other people and learning more and integrating themselves and also integrating technology.
Therefore, if I understood correctly, there is a lot of correlation between part of what Nicole was explaining and you were explaining in several points, maybe, and to point out a few as a big difference that doesn't only happen when organizing an event or different kind of communities, if we can use the word community, the difference between theory and practice and what happens in real life, the things that we can better, the importance of the experience that you want to provide to people that are attending to it, whether it is to build, whether it is to relax, whether it is to have a feeling of having a separated network state of people that are alike or not, and what you do about it, so it's actually more vision focused. And if I understood as well correctly, 2 points in common, and even to discuss further on possibly at the end of this panel, is the importance of curation of the people that are within the pop-up city, so they share the same values, the same intentions, and the way they could or not, whether it's part of the intention or the vision of the pop-up, of course, the same kind of norm of conduct, so to speak, so there is some kind of harmony that can also be challenged, which could be something interesting to debate, I assume, maybe by the end. And maybe we could go to another question to Emmy. Emmy, I understand that Crecimiento and Aleph, Ciudad de Crecimiento, but separated, Crecimiento and Aleph, are 2 different things. One more related to pop-up cities than the other. Could you please tell us about the main difference, as well as how can pop-up cities can be of use for communities in general and Web3 in particular?
Yeah, I mean, so this movement, the Crecimiento movement starts in around March of this year. And so we come to pop-up cities with the idea of using the concept as a tool in order to launch the overarching movement. So just to give some context on what these things are. Crecimiento is a movement that's trying to seize the moment, the very particular moment in time that we have in Argentina, with the administration that we have, that, as you might know, is a libertarian, which it's the first time that has happened in the world. We have an amazing organic bottoms-up adoption of crypto. We're talking about between 10 to 15% of the population in general has experience with crypto Web3 products. And then we have a number of OG developers and companies that come out of Argentina that a lot of people don't know, because as Argentines we have to protect ourselves in terms of tax reasons, regulatory reasons, and difficulties in scalability. So you have projects like Open Zeppelin, Decentraland, and so many others that either come, if you go to a conference, I would bet you that 90% of the projects have at least one Argentine involved. We can go through many reasons, but I'll keep my answer short. And it's basically catalyze this opportunity. It's if you imagine that we have 3 more years of this government, without assuming there's a second term, then you have to create this ecosystem of startups, companies, and people that manage to show the value and the potential that native crypto tools can have in a very short span of time. So that's why the pop-up ended up being in August, and this all started in March. So as you can imagine, and I'm Mili in this case is moderating the panel, but she also helped build and create this entire movement in the city. And it's a very short period of time, but it was under the idea that if you want to develop a startup into a big company, you have 1 year in order to get product market fit and investment and everything into growing into a project. And then you have 2 years to scale that to a level that if things change with the next terms, people already saw the value of what was happening. And so then they're not going to want to bring it back. So the 3 overarching goals of the movement is to bring 10 million more people on chain in Argentina using Web3 products, to bring regulatory stability to those startups for them to be able to grow not only in the short term but in the long term, and to improve the ecosystem the startup ecosystem itself and the amount of startups that are being like developed from Argentina. So the pop-up serves as a catalyst of we're launching this, and you have to get the shelling point, like this focal point, into Buenos Aires for a month, where you can say, this is a statement that we're making of our goals that we want to accomplish. Please come see it and spend a month. Like networking with amazing entrepreneurs and just realizing the potential that this might have. You know, it's an amazing place to work. And I call it like the hidden gem of crypto, Buenos Aires, because you know a lot of people it's like Berlin and Singapore and these places in the world, but Buenos Aires is like a stronghold in the industry.
Not so hidden anymore.
Not so hidden anymore, hopefully. I mean, it was crazy for me because never been an organizer before, and it ended up being crazy. At one point, we had like 60 people in the team. Like, we had over 2,200 people participate, and you know, for me, I've always been interested. I remember when Vitalik published the paper, and I loved the idea that he put a name initially, like not that involved to what happened afterwards, but he put a name to the idea of something that was happening in a specific format, but it was sort of a behavior that was happening, and I think it relates a lot. And please tell me if I'm too long in my answer, but like. It was a movement that for me relates a lot to like the internet movement, the internet of communications, then of value, and then of movement. Because when you start seeing like information from all over the world and see what other people are doing, and when you have the freedom of moving capital around the world, I think inherently you're going to have people looking at where they live as also sort of, don't want to say product, but it's like you're going to see places around the world that you're going to feel super excited to participate, and those can be either short term or a bit longer term or surrounded by a certain topic or an idea, but I think we're going to see an explosion, an experiment in what these things could be, sort of like online communities. But again, there's like a number of ways that people are using it. Sometimes like there's so few terms to specify what each of the things are that might create confusion. I'll only speak from my side that within Crecimiento and Aleph is like I have a goal of setting and creating and helping the Argentinian ecosystem develop many startups, many projects, and grow. So therefore, the way that we as organizers sort of set this environment is how do you attract those people, and what those people, which I consider to be one of those people, is like what do you want, and what makes it so attractive that you go and saying, I want to spend a month in that place and get to know everyone that's there.
So we would be saying that in this case, Aleph of the Popup City would be a means to an end related to the objectives of Crecimiento as a whole.
Yes, I would say it's a mean to an end, but at the same time, I think organically it can take whatever shape or form from now on. And there's a lot of discussions on what that's going to be, you know, because there's like in December we're gonna do another like event, but then you start saying, you know, it's gonna be like a 2-week or 1 week event. Is it a pop-up city or is it like a long conference? So it's just this idea is floating, and to be precise, you know, it's sort of the feeling of, for me, what separates it is during August I saw a lot of people that didn't know each other that well, or maybe they had a little beef between each other, and after spending some time like doing your washing, going to the gym, and like talking for a bit, they were best friends. And it's like breaking the short-term barrier to bring it into a long-term network connection format. That's what I think defines it in my perspective, and that's why I like seeing it as well. It's just this gaps of like empathy thing.
That a very interesting comment about that you said before, which had to do with the conversation that we had with Petra a couple of days ago, and enjoying here in Ericeira in Portugal in the middle of Builders Monastery, saying something like, this is a product that I also wanted for myself, and on all of the things that can bring for the things that we also want to create, which relates to the question I want to ask you, Petra, related to Builders Monastery, of course. Why, and also related to one of the comments that Nicole made at the very beginning, why is it so important for Builders Monastery to build a pop-up that is builders focused?
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. As Nicole said, Zuzalu was great minds interfacing with each other, but it was maybe too interesting and hard to get like focus time. Like you could see some people that would be like the ones grinding, and it would be like if you are really like dedicated, it was too hard to do it. And from that moment, I was thinking it would be great to have in between Zuzalus like a moment or a place where we can gather to grind. And by this also it's not only developers, I think builders are, that's why I didn't do like hacker monastery or something like that. I think there is much wider, like scientific people can be builders, artists can be builders. Yeah, there is like countless example of builders. And even yes, there was like this cryptographer the first week, and he was like, okay, I think I'm like, this is too much fun for me for doing cryptography. And even though we got a lot of new ideas, I sensed that we needed this space to build. And then Zuzalu got decentralized, so it made even more sense to have something. And I'm glad that Zuzalu is happening and is also pushing that direction of having like this space, so we can have like pop-ups that are more into like interestingness and the community and this like the empathy side. Also like some are more like into interfacing with the local government, and we can have others that are more isolated. And it's not the goal, but it's like it's all trade-offs, so I'm comfortable with that. Sometimes you want something more isolated and more focused on shipping, as we say with code. And also something really important is that builders can be onboarded not only on the more technical or craftsmanship, but also on the ethos. There is a lot of things that you learn by sharing with other people. There are great builders in the space that not only like technically, but also as people, and they set super high standards on ethical, on the ethos, and they are very cypherpunk, and the industry is going sometimes, at least in Web3, but you can apply it to every industry, more not so on ideals. So having people that you can share day to day that will be an example on that, I think is very important for everyone, but mostly for people that are new to the space. So I think that having builders sharing a space is very important in that sense. And also we have a lot of issues to solve globally, so not having this space for me is too dangerous in a way. Like we can end up very bad because of not giving the people that can make a change the context to do it.
During Crecimiento, which is the whole month of August, and after Crecimiento, I had similar feedback on this is so cool, but there's so much happening that first of all, I get a lot of FOMO. Second of all, I don't have enough time to really sit down and do, which I guess also relates to how you create the experience for the people that are there in the vision that you have. But then as an organizer, part of the organizing team with Emmy, personally, I was not able to do any of the fun stuff because I was working on organizing. And there were like people super relaxing after the wellness activities. It was like, we can go to yoga class at 9 a.m. I cannot afford that. But I understood how it would be challenging.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah.
Some of the open questions that I had, which would be a little bit like fishing stick to see if whoever wants to grab it, or maybe do a little bit of ping pong with the rest of you, is are there any important conduct rules that should apply to every or most of pop-ups, for example, if any? And if there are, which one would be? Anyone?
Answer? I'll just give a brief start. I think every different. I think we could go back to naming, but I think every different pop-up city should have its own. Like it's almost like setting up a work of art, an experiment, and experience something that you're creating. At least I'll go from my side. And there shouldn't be any kind of related values, the same way that the internet, when it started, didn't have values, or that level of I don't want to say freedom because it's another word that has connotation, but it's like it should be also, in my opinion.
I think that all of the pop-ups should, in order to be of some qualitative depth, should be about something rather than nothing, and just let whoever come and it's whatever. Because this thing already exists, it also has its justification, but I think this is one very clear thing that adds to the quality. Another thing that I think that all the pop-ups should do is communicate what they are about in an authentic way, and not just focused on selling tickets, making vague promises, making basically shilling, or basically focusing on the effect of the marketing or so, rather than going for the events themselves, or for the nature and for the essence of what they even want to do. But I absolutely agree with Emmy. There are no overarching values. Deception is always bad. It's like, yeah, no pop-up should kill people. It's like that what I said, rather than I think that there are no shared values in pop-ups. It's like people coming together, living there. It's like a camping place, usually. And it is rather very important to not give them any rules, because when you have these standards, then you create a capture game, and you force the people that would not adhere to the standards to adapt to the standards, or communicate that they would adapt to the standards. It should be totally okay to do something not at all tech related, something that's just party, something that's just co-working, that is doing art together, cooking together, raising children together, or homeschooling children together for 2 months over the summer. Totally legit. Why should they follow the same rules and qualities if they also have 6-year-old people that they include in their program, with what we do in Georgia when we talk about to government officials, or when we want to raise the cognitive standards of the individuals so high that we max out the interoperability between them and their ability to find other projects, or to make use of the tools, or to add tools and modules.
So there is an agreement between both of your stands, and there are not overall rules that would apply to a generalism of pop-up CDs, and then you would just adapt to each particular case and the vision of the organizers and what they want to create.
It's like a party.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's important because it's a way of curating. Like when you said what, like as Björn was saying, when you share what you're about in a genuine way, people self-select, and the curation part for every pop-up is important. And I think we have seen that, luckily, people self-select a lot. Like if you're like, okay, no shilling, probably shillers will say, okay, I better stay out from here. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. And this is the basic requirement to have an intentional community about something, is you need to have a course that you can communicate to the people that should self-select, and the people that should self-select also needs to have the ability to authentically identify their honest interests towards that kind of topic, alignment, whatever. And if these two elements are fulfilled, yeah, then you're talking. But if that is not possible, people don't know what they're talking about and what they're even coming for. And that's of course something to fail forward.
Yeah. I think there's going to be, this is so new, I think there's going to be probably naming conventions that appear, because also like a pop-up city is a very generic term. It's like you were saying, like a party, and it's like you can't expect parties to have a certain format, but if someone invites you to a party at 9 AM to have tea, you're never talking to them again. It's like, you're making it wrong. I don't know what specifically, but it's not that. So yeah, that's what I think.
If you don't call it 9 AM tea party and communicate it, no?
I mean, it's
Then
going to
you
be
find
9 PM
exactly
somewhere in
the
the world
people that
anyway,
want
but it's a different conversation. It's interesting as well, because maybe we're not talking about rules, but we could talk about guidelines on what we would suggest, or each of you would suggest for future pop-up cities, or things to bear in mind, like everything that Nicole's a suggestion right now. But if we are mindful with time, and after almost 40 minutes of this panel starting, I would like to end up with a small question for each of you, unless any of you would like to add anything else. That would be, what are the biggest challenges that you have had to endure with the organization of your own events so far? And one suggestion for whoever would like to either organize their own or go to one of these. Whoever wants to start?
Okay. Yes, we were talking about this today with Nicole. Like sometimes trying to keep something low key because of this thing about self-curation and trying to like see who you communicated with and not being like too much into the marketing or selling part, because it's like when you're a builder, it's sometimes a little bit gross when someone approaches that way. But in the other side, what I learned is that if you don't do it, if you don't share about the world, the chances of people knowing about it are very low. So that's like a big learning. Better to overshare than to not share.
I would say, I guess Aleph was a bit different just because we had a lot of help, which in terms of sponsors, funding, and a bunch of things. I think experimentation is great. Having technological tools with people working and experiment. At one point it's like we need to give everyone we should have a single space where everyone can go eat and network and mingle. That in the middle of the city of Monastery became impossible. So it's like, all right, we should give everyone vouchers for lunch and onboard the restaurants in the area to accept the vouchers in crypto, because there was one of the companies that was working on this, and we gave it, and then someone created a Uniswap pool, and they started trading that, and it became like this whole like morphy, super interesting thing that happened. So yes, tech is clunky when you're making an event to prepare yourself for a lot of things failing. If you want reliability, but at the same time, at the beginning of this, we should be like leaning into and improving all the tool set and learning from each of us mistakes and share. And that would lead me to the last point, that I wouldn't say guidelines, I wouldn't say regulation or anything, but information sharing and the painful process that I just went through, and you Mili as well, for 2 months. We really have to communicate and put it out there and say like, don't do this again, and definitely do that again. But I guess that's my point.
The biggest challenge in zuGeorgia was, in comparison to Zuzalu, we had a cultural direction. And our tracks were selected one after each other very carefully. Cognitive sovereignty, rationality, meta-rationality was not only a pre-curriculum that we had online sessions on, but it was the full first week. In order to create a culture where it's even positive to criticize something on stage if it's incorrect or so, or to communicate in a clear way, you have one very crucial element, and this is the struggling element. You need a big core of people that are there for most of the time. In Zuzalu, the fluctuation was huge. Most people just came for a week, left, maybe came back. Some stayed longer because they were already digital nomads, but many really high quality, talent in their field, respected talents in their field, they cannot afford to simply leave 6 weeks at a time from their academia job or from their company or from their family. So it's also valuable, but to counterbalance that, you need a big core group, so to say, that pull the culture through. Otherwise it will dilute. And we were a super low-key event. We did no marketing that is really aimed at selling tickets to whoever wants to buy them. There was no DevCon and no DevConnect next to us. And many people are also a bit scared of going to this country. It is a very safe country, I have to say that, but I also understand that some people are worried. So it was quite challenging to find the balance between the ideal and the pragmatism of how do we get enough people here that really commit. And we had so many really good applications from people from countries like India. Some took 15 hours of time, and it was an honor but also quite taxing to read such walls of text. But they then need the flights paid or so, and that was very much easier in Zuzalu. There were tons of sponsorships and the funding allowed for that. We had a rather tight budget, and it's like, I'm proud that we made it and it worked out really great, but it hurt that we had to decline some of the very best people because they just cannot afford to come.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah, I think that was the most challenging.
And visas also. I would add to my challenge, like having visa problems, and I think that's something that is in the community or floating, like, okay, how do we solve this as a whole, because every event has the same problem of having amazing people that cannot show up, even if they can pay for it.
We had one case, like one country with visa issues. Aside of that, let's say government connections and choosing countries that are not locked into the Schengen room come with certain upsides, but there are passports like Nigeria is a really, really challenging one, that even in Africa they cannot just travel around, and what to do in these cases is a bit really challenging. You also, the answer can also not be that we have to limit Zuzalu to the single places on earth where every single passport is accepted, and then we can dress very warmly because we can go to Svalbard or to some Terra Nula. So it's always exclusionary to some degree, and it's rather we can accept it or we can try to fit it for the use case as much as possible, but it's usually an 80-20 rule. If you just go for the ideal, then usually it will lose traction, or in the early stage you will not be able to really fulfill the requirements, I think.
I think like in our specific definition of Papa City that I've worked in, which is like these 200 living ones, like a good thing to look out for is to not sign contracts that you're not 100% certain about. You will get locked in and you will get locked down, and that's the biggest way you like screw up, I think. So we almost signed some predatory venues, and I'm really glad we kept pushing when it did not feel right, and we got more professional people to look over our contracts. But this is like #1 mistake, because like most pop-up city organizers, we're working with a very limited budgets. It's coming from sponsorship, and the sponsorship is coming from somewhere. For us, it's like crypto companies, of which I'd rather their money be well used. So once we realized like this cost would be so expensive that I'm worried if this is going to be a net negative on like the Ethereum ecosystem, then that's when I had the option of like, do I even proceed with this event, or can I not make it feasible? So just to give yourself that optionality, you're not locked in. Like I think the hardest piece here is venue, like find a venue that you can lock in and make sure you're negotiating a lot of details up front. Like there's like a lot of nitty gritty stuff here, but we negotiated down to what signage can we have up, like what electricity bill can we have, like can we, like all these little things. And also if you don't lock in any of these like room blocks, they'll like slowly turn the price up higher once your event starts to gain traction. It's like little things to watch out for. Like as an operator, just be careful of the contracts you're signing, because that's like the only permanent thing that you're doing. And yeah, visas. Visas are tough. So we chose Thailand because Thailand is one of the friendliest visas. But I think the best thing to do, which is something I'm not very good at, is to give your residents a lot of turnaround time. The earlier you can give them their acceptances, the earlier they can start the visa process. And that might help get a lot of people through, at least give you more time to figure it out. Yeah.
Thanks. I quickly want to add to that about the contracts. This is very correct, and this was, I think, in Zuzalu 1, it was a manageable problem due to unprecedented circumstances. But rule #1 for any event organizer is be very diligent about liability. When anything goes wrong, can you personally be liable for anything? Somebody can have an accident and it was your event. Maybe it's framed as your company because you cashed in, because you sold tickets instead of choosing a different solution. And if you are aware that you can be highly liable in a dimension that would surpass your personal finances, then you won't sleep very well during your event, and then it will be very stressful for you, and you will not be able to make the big jumps because you have to take a too defensive route. It's very important to have a deadline date. You can usually pay a venue up front and pay a higher sum up front, so that they make very clear, until this day you can completely blow everything off, you lose the down payment, but aside of that, whatever was planned is gone. What if you don't sell enough tickets? And what if you don't have a huge, what if you're not so wealthy that you just don't have to care about these things? This is a very crucial step. We also research solution modules for that, funding mechanisms, and we had a crucial topic in legal engineering that can take care about of many of these problems, but the awareness, what you yourself risk if you choose to organize something like that, is absolutely holy and sacred to you. Another thing is being capture resistant, not only for their own culture, but also when you go for sponsors. Sponsors usually don't give money just because they like your product or your project. They usually want something in return, maybe publicity, that's the easiest thing to sandbox and therefore protect against, but maybe also power to bring people to your event that can surpass the application forms, and then they send their VCs, of course, and something like that. And a little bit of an attack model thinking is very healthy in that case, because yes, of course, this is the Web3 ethos of everybody trusts everyone until proven wrong, but if you are the event organizer, you don't have that luxury, because if stuff fails, you have failed, and that might have consequences for you. And you might not be so ambivalent against these consequences, so you need to handle that beforehand. And when that is completely, not like nearly fail-safe or with legal security fail-safely dealt, then there can be the community and the trust and this part. But only if you have that quiet sleep at night, because you did take care that your event, your organization is fail-safe and capture resistant.
I was also going to say, as a lawyer and having helped with Crecimiento with this organizing, where they'll read your contracts, corporate liability, insurance, and this kind of thing, to always plan bearing in mind the best case scenario, but especially sometimes the worst case scenario, so you can feel safe, your team can be safe, and also the reputation and predictability of your project, protocol, or pop-up can be safe. I believe, guys, that we can feel very happy about the panel that just happened. Thank you so much, Nicole, Burns, Amy, Petra, and everyone that's here in person for your attendance and all the insights that you guys have shared. And hopefully it's first to many more. And thank you.
Thank you, Mili, as well.
Now we can go like this.
I need to go to the back.
Spicy questions.